Hello, my name is Makani Sabala and for this week's assignment, I chose to do a discussion on Russian Ark, a film by Alexander Sokolov. For the summary, this isn't really a traditional film. It's more experimental, but the two main characters that we do get from it are the narrator and the European. The narrator is the point of view that we will follow throughout the film. It's a first-person perspective from the narrator. What we know about him, we don't really get much details about his backstory. What we do know is he's from the present and he's just been thrown into this strange situation of the Winter Palace and the Hermitage. Alongside the narrator, we get the European. He provides good running commentary about the situation and the different scenes that we encounter throughout the film. He is based on a real character in history or a real person. Based off of the Marquis de Custine. The Marquis was a figure who went to Russia during the 18th century, during the rule of Nicholas I. He went to Russia to figure out why the aristocracy and monarchy were better than the democracies that were emerging in France and other European countries at the time. But what he found was that it wasn't really better. The aristocracy really just jumbled everything up and provided a really shoddy government and order in Russia. So he wrote a couple of books about Russia, his experience in it, and it kind of mocked the people and the country and even the ruler, Nicholas I, and that kind of got him kicked out of the country. So that's some of the backstory we get about de Custine, but it's not really gone into detail within the film. It's not really a film focused on the characters, it's more about the setting. And this is a quote by Roger Ebert about the film. If cinema is sometimes dreamlike, then every edit is an awakening. Russian Ark spins a daydream made of centuries. The setting of this film, it's entirely based within the Winter Palace. The Winter Palace is a complex within the Hermitage, and the Hermitage is a museum located in St. Petersburg. It houses the largest collection of paintings and antiques within the world. I think it's the second largest in the world. And throughout the movie, it goes through the Winter Palace, but in different historical periods and during different events in history. So in one part during a play, it's probably set in the 18th century, but by the next room, it's back into the 21st, or even in the 19th. So it really just interconnects different historical periods within the different parts of the Winter Palace. And within these different, I would say, scenes, we get different Russian historical figures. Some of the most notable are Catherine the Great, Peter the Great, and a few others like the current director of the Hermitage. He makes an appearance as himself in the film. Connecting Russian Ark to the documentary. So, within the documentary, I guess this part of it, Cinema Today and the Future, they talk about the use of different filmmaking innovations within the 21st century. And within this film, what they first choose is the Steadicam. Before this, the Steadicam wasn't really used that, I guess you could say, religiously. But in this film, it is absolutely necessary to get the shots. And I would say actually just the shot, because this film was shot in one sequence shot. So meaning that the entire film was, there were no cuts, there were edits, but not in the traditional sense. The film was just shot in one long take. So it's, I would think it's an hour and 30 minutes, 96 minutes runtime. So throughout that runtime, it's just one shot, no cuts. So that's a good, indication of the new innovations in filmmaking that allowed for these kind of films to be made. I would classify this film as a historical drama with documentary elements. It feels kind of like a documentary because it's so grounded in historical events, and it really goes to great lengths to make it feel as if you're in that period and experiencing these different portions of Russian history. The costuming, the different, I guess you could say set pieces and props that are used they put great painstaking detail into matching them to the historical periods to, I guess you could say, make it as historical accurate as possible. and now connecting it to Russian Ark, to the textbook, History and Film. So the three things that I took from this chapter were the understanding the context of history within the films. And that's really apparent in this film because there's a lot of history that's gone over inside Russian Ark. From the imperial period up into the Soviet era and the modern period. It goes through so many events that you really have to have a good understanding of Russian history to really appreciate what they're trying to do within the film. Another thing that I got from the textbook was the use of internet and discerning reliable websites. In doing my research for this film, to have a better understanding of what it was about, I went through different historical websites about Russia and different parts of the history, as well as some of the film review sites and reviewers. Like I read through, one of the most notable were Robert Ebert's review about the film, and it seems, or using those kind of sources, you get a good idea of what the film was trying to portray or what it was trying to bring across. So, and then the last piece that I got from the textbook was film as historical sources. This film could definitely be used as a historical source because of what it's about. It's not really a film about the characters or any character. It's more about the history of Russia through this one setting of the Winter Palace and what kind of history it held within it. It has so much history from the very founding of St. Petersburg as a city when Peter the Great came and built the city up and the Winter Palace, and throughout all the history of that building up until the present, living through the World Wars and going through a lot of other historical events. So it really shows that now in the modern era that we can now begin to use film as a reliable source of historical information and not just as a means of entertainment. And that will be it for my discussion and I would say review of Russian Ark. It's definitely a wonderful film. It's definitely a great film for historical buffs or anyone that's really interested in Russian history or history in general. I would definitely recommend this film to even my friends because it's really just such an amazing piece of filmmaking. Being able to just see this gliding shot throughout the entire movie and just it is like a dreamlike, as Robert Ebert said. So yeah, thank you.